It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this. Mike, what is this that we're doing, though? I forget. We haven't done one of these in a while. E3 happened, and I got all confused. How does this work?
Yeah, we had E3 for a bit. We were doing some other things, but we're back to our tier list bullshit. Nintendo announced the new Metroid game finally, and Metroid Dread coming out this fall, and I'm in a big Metroid mood. And, we did the Zelda games and the Mario game tier list, so now we're going to do one for the Metroid series. This includes all of the Metroid games because there aren't that many spinoffs anyway, so I just threw those few of those in here. The only thing it doesn't really include is Metroid Prime Trilogy because that's just a compilation. But right. This is all of them, 13 or so games, I think.
Yeah, and I've played most of these. I did skip a few key ones, but that's never stopped me from ranking anything before. So,
sure. I mean, chances are if you skipped one, there was a good reason for it. Yeah. So you'll be fine.
I've played some of the more obscure ones, actually, which is weird. But then, the later ones actually started missing. We can get started, but do you want to explain the tier ranking list that we have over here so people are not confused by the word bikini?
Well, so this is inspired by the endings you can get in the original Metroid. Depending on how fast you beat the game, maybe some other parameters, you get a different ending. The worst ending you can get is just Samus in her full body armor with her back turned to you. So that is the lowest tier. That is talk to the back. Beat it a little faster than that, you just get her facing you, but still in the full armor. Then better than that, she doesn't have her helmet on, so you can see her womanly face and long locks. Then above that is she's not wearing the suit at all. She has clothes on. I didn't know what to call the clothes. It's
should it be Zero Suit?
No, because it's not in the NES game. It's not a Zero Suit because the thighs are exposed. It almost looks like something they would wear in Flashdance.
Right.
So, right. But then above that is clearly just her in a bikini. So that one is easy enough. That's which almost makes me feel a little skeevy. That's your reward. There's an 8-bit character in a bikini. But there it is. There's our top tier.
It is what it is.
If it's confusing to you, you can just think of it as S tier to A, B, C to D tier on the bottom. But we'll be referring to these things as bikini, no suit, no helmet, full armor, and talk to the back.
And we start with the original game, Metroid, which came out. Let's see if this is the
86.
Yeah. So because we're in the 35th anniversary, right? So wow.
I just remember because it's this 35th. Yeah. So it's the same year I was born. I'm going to turn 35 this year. Oh no. 1986, one of the core kind of NES games, right? Mm-hmm. I actually just beat this for the first time the other night. I played it before, but as a kid, it was a bit overwhelming, right?
Right.
And that's maybe the biggest knock against this game is its overwhelming nature. I mean, Zelda 1 is like that too. But it's a game they clearly want you to have a Nintendo Power subscription to help you beat this game. There's no in-game map like there is with Super Metroid and your modern Metroidvanias. But it still nails the formula. Pretty much a lot of it is there. The atmosphere, that kind of weird, creepy feeling is already here, even in this NES 8-bit form. The cool monster design, Samus herself, these bosses, the music is fantastic. It does control very well, and it's that whole, it is an exploration-based 2D platforming action game, and that works fantastically. I don't know. What do you think about Metroid the first?
I think it's pretty good. I think you're right about nailing the atmosphere and nailing the way it feels. And we'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but a lot of the monster designs that were started here, they show up in later games. They get updated to 3D because you don't need to really do much to them. You just need to give them a little bit, an extra dimension, and they still work. It's a really solid foundation. I think it's not quite as solid as the Zelda 1 in my opinion, but that's only because Zelda 1 did have something akin to a map, I think. Yeah. And then this does not. And so that
you would have a map.
Right.
Yeah. But in the overworld, it could still be confusing and things could be very obtuse and they can't be here, right? It's you get to a wall and it's, you're supposed to just bomb this one area. Then you go through. And that's exactly like Zelda. These first NES games are always kind of awkward because in most cases there's just a better 16-bit version. We said the same thing about Zelda 1. I just like the past more. Or even Mario 1 or even Mario 3. I'm I like Mario World more.
Yeah.
So
looking at
Go
this,
ahead.
yeah, just looking at the tiers and looking at the games we have coming up. I mean, I feel pretty good putting this one right dead in the middle at no helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking. And I
Okay.
think we do as well. It's like, because it's like, it's very important and it's still good and it's so impressive. I don't really want to play it. But,
Yeah.
but I did actually just play it and it was still fun. But I had to play it with like a YouTube tutorial, right? Like
Right.
if I had just jumped in, who knows how much fun I would have had. So
Right.
yeah, we'll put Metroid. I love that. I love those NES covers, by the way, that just actually had the pixel art on them. I don't know how people feel about those, but I think that those are so iconic and fun. Actually, that was actually the first video game T-shirt I ever bought. The first time I found a Hot Topic in Universal Hollywood, and I saw that, I was like, "What? There's a video game shirt?"
Yeah,
I thought that was the coolest thing.
It's a good design. It's a good cover, and yeah, no, I agree. I liked seeing the pixel art on the covers of games back then. Metroid 2, the Samus Return. This one's Return of Samus.
This is the Return of Samus, and then when the remake is Samus Returns, it is confusing.
Yes.
So yeah, this is a Game Boy game, and this one is a little rough for me.
Yes.
I've tried a few times. It has a lot of the faults of the original Metroid, but then it has a lot of the kind of Game Boy-esque faults. Like everything is almost too big and zoomed in. I think it still doesn't have a map. Maybe I'm just wrong there, but I feel like it's very confusing. And at least with the NES Metroid game, it could use colors to help distinguish areas and help you remember. And this can't even do that. So it's pretty samey. The whole structure of it, you're just going around killing these Metroids. I don't know. This was one I was never very interested in.
Yeah, and it's definitely not the equivalent of Link's Awakening on
That's
the
what
Game
I was
Boy.
thinking. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not even the equivalent of Mario Land 2. Maybe it's the equivalent of Mario Land 1.
Right, and you're right. It's just way too zoomed in. The low resolution required really big character designs, and that just took up so much space on the screen that it felt really kind of claustrophobic in a way that was not atmospheric. It was just annoying. Yeah, I'm playing another Metroid 2 remake, which is a more faithful remake of this game than Samus Returns, and I'm really liking that. There's some core bones here that work really well, and if you make it look and feel like Super Metroid, it works really well, of course, because it's Super Metroid at that point. But when it just comes to this game, it's definitely below Metroid. But I don't know. I don't think it needs to go all the way to the bottom, because it's still kind of cool to have a Metroid on a Game Boy.
Yeah, because there's nothing like, I don't hate this game.
Right.
Right. And there are maybe some games here that I feel like negatively towards. This one is just like, yeah, I'd rather not.
Yes.
Like I bet if I forced myself to play through it, I would find something to enjoy about it. But even more like Metroid, the first one, I could be like, oh, you could probably just play Zero Mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you should. But I still think you'd enjoy Metroid 1. Metroid 2, I would really be like, just play another Metroid 2 remake or play Samus Returns.
Yes.
You'll be fine.
Absolutely. And just for people who want to know, that Retroid Pocket thing that I always talk about comes with another Metroid 2 remake built right in.
That's neat.
So if we buy that, it just comes right there. You can play it immediately. You don't have to download it or anything. Okay, so then I put it in full armor, and we feel good about that, right?
I feel good about it. I feel good.
Super Metroid. Now, what is this game, Mike?
Oh, this guy gonna talk to I mean, come on, yeah, this is the easiest top tier of all time. Just throw it up there.
I think so. Yeah, it's
Super Metroid. I remember talking about how, because sometimes you'll have people be like, Sonic was never good, or Mario 64 was never good. And I even said to you, the day that there's like a significant Super Metroid was never good conversation is when I know I'm just done. I'm just too old for all
so I'm gonna walk into the woods. You'll never see me again. Yeah.
This is the like every time one of those Nintendo things comes out, and it's like we have all those Super Nintendo games on here, like Link to the Past and Super Mario World. I always like play those for a little bit, and then I start Super Metroid like on my SNES Classic, and I just play through Super Metroid again because it's still that good. It's still just this fantastic, perfect 2D exploration game with this incredible atmosphere and music. It's just so fun, just so clever. Like still somehow one of the best ending sequences of a game ever. The whole when you're going down and the baby Metroid appears the first time and almost kills you, and then it comes back to help you in that final fight. It's like I had chills. And it was, even when I first played it, it was probably like 2000. It was a little bit after the time. Like that's just not diminished at all. And even another 21 years later, not diminished. Just incredible. What can you say about that's bad? I can't think of a single. I guess sometimes you get stuck, but that's when you're supposed to be going around and exploring and finding these upgrades while you're trying to find the correct path. And it has that in-game map, so it's not nearly as frustrating as it was in Metroid 1 or 2.
Right. And really those upgrades, like they really nailed like doling out the upgrades at a really steady pace and getting you familiar with your location so that when you did get a new upgrade, you're like, oh man, I can go use this here and here and here. And it was just this great, like constant cycle of you're getting a little bit lost, a little frustrated, you get an upgrade, and now this whole new part of the world is unlocked to you, and that encourages you to keep going. And as you do that, you discover more places that you might not be able to get to, and then you get another upgrade, and it's just it's a really, really solid progression system in a day where we didn't even really think a lot about progression systems in games, right? It was just not something, you just kind of you played the game and you didn't think much about, like, I think even designers weren't thinking too much about, like, okay, we need to make sure this is all well paced and feels good throughout. Super Metroid, a perfect early example of what good pacing feels like, and it's a lot of it comes down to just the way this game works and why Metroidvanias work and why the genre is called Metroidvania, and and why it starts with Metroid. Easy top tier.
Yeah, best Super Nintendo game, honestly.
Yes, yeah, it is. God, from strength to strength. Super Metroid to Metroid Prime on the GameCube in 2001? 2002?
2002. 2001 was when the GameCube came out, so right. 2002.
Okay, man.
2001 GameCube games were just like Smash Bros. Melee, Pikmin, and then the launch titles.
Yeah.
Like we just mentioned, Monkey Ball. This is top tier also. This is another very easy Bikini for me. Wow, this game. So this is the best looking game of that era. First off, just graphically on any of those three systems, this game looked so good. And it was weird because at that time, nobody was like, Nintendo still had, even then, even when the hardware was comparable to other ones, was like, yeah, Nintendo games are the most fun. They're not always the most graphically impressive. And then this game was just absolutely gorgeous from the studio. I don't think any of us knew. Like, where did this thing come from? Right? It's just incredible. Everyone was so skeptical too, because it was like, oh, a first-person Metroid. Yeah. Even then, it was like imagine if there never had been a 3D Metroid game, and all of a sudden today they're like, we're making a first-person shooter Metroid. How much people would freak out that everyone was really skeptical of this, and it is just incredible. The soundtrack does that weird, like it's like that mixture of classic sci-fi sounds with these kind of like Gregorian chants. It is just this most incredible mixture. The pacing is as good as it is in Super Metroid. Again, I don't know if I have anything bad to say about this one.
I mean, it's, the bad thing now is if you go back and try to play it with the controls, it takes about, for me, I'm playing it right now. I started playing it again a few nights ago, and I'm pretty deep into it. I'm going to beat it probably in the next couple of nights. The controls take about 5 minutes to get used to. They're tank not controls. Yes, they're tank controls, and but it's fine once you start playing and once you realize, like, okay, once I'm facing an enemy, and like that's when these controls will be a problem. You don't use those controls anymore. You use Z targeting, and it's like it is absolutely in the way that this franchise does mirror Zelda in a lot of ways. It's just Zelda from a different perspective in many regards, where you are finding items that enables you to unlock new parts of the map, and but in the way that when Zelda went to 3D. I think this transition for Metroid was even better. Like they just nailed everything. They nailed the look, the feel, and then bringing that Z targeting in for the first person combat worked really well. Scanning things, like giving you something else to do in this world besides just combat and exploration.
So games are still doing that.
Yes,
right. Like there's still so many games we can compare to Metroid Prime just from scanning alone. Yeah, so there's like two ways to go about making your 3D adaptation of a classic 2D series. Like with Mario, they basically made a new game.
Yeah,
with Mario 64. There's like similarities and some recurring enemies, but it's very different. Then Ocarina of Time is basically Link to the Past in 3D. And if you would have told me to guess how they're going to bring Metroid into 3D, I would have guessed they would have to do the Mario route, right? Like kind of reinvent. So now this really is just like 3D Super Metroid, and somehow it works so well. And even those tank controls do bother you. The Wii version, you can play on Wii U, is very good. And I imagine at some point we're going to get this on Switch, and it'll probably just have like real like dual stick movement control or something.
Yeah, but and again though, 5 minutes it took me to get used to it. It's not like Resident Evil 4, where Resident Evil 4 is very difficult to go back to and does take a lot more time to get used to those controls. This is just like a matter of minutes if you're willing to give it a chance.
Well, Resident Evil 4 doesn't have a Z lock feature, so that's the difference there.
It's a huge difference.
one thing people do complain about is like finding the artifacts at the end, and that doesn't bother me because to me that's just like, oh, cool. Like yeah, now we're going back to these areas like with pretty much
Fully
all of
powered
our
up.
power
Yep.
ups. And again, it's like an excuse to find more missile upgrades and health like upgrades. And at that point, you're like you are very familiar with these areas, so you kind of know the shortcuts. You're discovering new things. Like I never really understood that complaint, that aspect of it. Like that's the fun part. Like you're the master of the world at that part, and you're kind of going around and just hunting for these things, getting more lore. The lore is good. Like Talon 4, what a great world. Like there's something about that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two things about this one, and then we'll move on. My wife is scared of Metroids, but she still played this game because it was so good, and she beat it all the way through. And I'm like, she plays some games here, but she likes the Pikmin games. She played this, but she doesn't play a ton. But the fact that she like saw this one through, I think is a good sign. This is a pretty good game that is kind of a classic and timeless. And then at the time, Mark McDonald in his review for EGM said it was like if the best game from 5 years in the future came back and we were playing it, like that's what it felt like at the time. And I think that quote absolutely held up because for years we were getting games that just didn't look as good, didn't feel as good, just didn't fully understand like the way you structure a game as well as this. And really to this day, there are many games that don't come close to this in terms of quality. So just an all-time great game.
Just in terms of 3D Metroidvanias, if you want to call it that, the only thing that I really super compare to this now is, I mean, Arkham Asylum came pretty close.
Yeah,
Jedi Fallen Order had a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But
it was taken as a flavor among other flavors.
Right.
But yeah, Arkham Asylum is a really solid one. One of the reasons I love Arkham Asylum so much is because of that. So, yeah. But we don't have a lot. I think we might start getting some more here pretty soon. It feels like that idea, like, hey, Metroid Prime was pretty good. We should just do that. And if Metroid Prime 4 ever comes out, maybe we'll get another one right there. Yeah, easy top tier. Okay. So then we go back to some 2D games. We have Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance, and that came out at the exact same time as Prime, right?
Right, which is interesting because there's a bit of a dry spell between. I mean, there's no Nintendo 64 Metroid game, right? No Game Boy Color Metroid game, so there's a bit of a dry spell there. And then we got both of these at once. And like Metroid Fusion is from a lot of people who did Super Metroid. It was Metroid 4. It's called in the title, kind of like how Metroid Dread is Metroid 5. So, we talked about this a little bit. I think some people are a little divided on Metroid Fusion. Some people really love it. And some people I think are just like, it's just a slightly worse Super Metroid. And that alone is like, why not just play Super Metroid? I do like it. I think it is a lot of fun. I mean, it is Super Metroid in a lot of ways. And that alone is going to get you somewhere pretty high. It does have some flaws. It is short even for one of these games. And these games can be short, especially if you know what you're doing, if you're not lost. And it kind of has that weird structure of like you go into these elevators or these different zones. So it's almost like I said, like this one big Metroidvania map. You have like a few different ones. So that kind of makes the game feel smaller in a way. Yeah. But I mean, it's like I like the whole you're on a spaceship kind of thing. Again, it feels even more alien some of these other ones. And they all feel they're all clearly inspired by Alien. But this one especially is like the Alien 1-ass Metroid game. Yeah. Like the Zero Suit itself looks cool. The bosses I remember fun. Even just like the big new thing here was like the whole you can hang onto the sceiling at some points. Right. And that was even neat. What do you think about Fusion? I think you're a little bit more down on it than I am.
A little bit, but it's still a good game. It is still like it. It's another Super Metroid, and that was pretty good. But the problem for me was at the time I was very into the Castlevania Metroidvania games on the Game Boy Advance, which I think were better in most cases than this. And then Zero Mission came out, which we'll talk about next. And I like that a lot better. So it was like, okay, Fusion kind of just missed me a little bit. It's not a bad game, but it just wasn't exactly what I wanted. And it's been so long since I played it now. But from what I remember, it was the smaller maps making it feel smaller, and I think the cut scenes when you were on the elevators and stuff kind of broke up the flow for me a little bit.
See that I didn't mind that. And this was like the most story we had in a Metroid game at that point. It's already talking about Adam, everybody's favorite Metroid character, right? Yep. So yeah. See, I don't know. And I guess we're talking about Zero Mission a little bit here. I almost like the two about the same, and they're very similar in a lot of ways. Metroid Zero Mission, I guess, is a more complete game in a lot of aspects. So I would put it in no suit. I feel like you would put it in no helmet.
Yeah, but I think I think I'm okay with if we put both that and then also Zero Mission and no suit. Like, how do you feel about Zero Mission then?
Yeah, Zero Mission I think is a pretty easy no suit because it is basically just taking Metroid 1 and making it feel more like Super Metroid.
Right.
And even then, it's not as good as Super Metroid. But then you have that neat coda, which helps a bit, where you're doing the Zero Suit Samus thing, and it's a little bit of a stealth thing. It almost goes on a little too long, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get your suit back, and you kind of have that fun power trip of going through that area where before you're being really careful and you couldn't like engage a single enemy, and then you're just like running through and screw attacking everybody and killing them one hit, and that feels great. But it's probably the better of the two, and honestly, at this point, probably is the second best 2D Metroid game after Super Metroid.
Metroid Prime Echoes. This is Metroid Prime 2. How do you feel about this one?
This one is tough. I still haven't beaten it. I've started it, I think, 5 times.
Same.
And I get various lengths into it. And every time I'm like, this is the time I'm going to beat it. The beginning is slow, which is weird because, you think that all the Metroid games are slow beginnings because, you like get your powers and then you lose them. But they don't feel that way. Like Metroid Prime 1, like the frigate thing, that's fantastic.
Yes.
But at the start of Metroid Prime 2, I do feel like there's a bit too much story. It's neat that they kind of just basically said, hey, Link to the Past was good. Let's do something like that. But then they kind of make it annoying with the whole like, if you're in the dark area for too long until a certain point, you could take damage. Yeah, like the dark ammo and the light ammo, and it's almost like an Ikaruga thing where you have to like hit the ones the opposite side. And sometimes I just don't want to do it. And there was actually ammo too, right? Aside from just like missiles, there's ammo for those weapons, which is a little annoying. I mean, ultimately good, just not as good as Metroid Prime it's kind of the legacy of Echoes, right?
That's how I feel about it too, where it's like, I mean, I never beat it, but I think part of it's just like it goes on. I think they specifically made it a bigger game because the first one was such a breakout, like critical success. And but it doesn't fully recapture the magic, and that a lot of that just it's not as well paced. And you're right. Some of the new mechanics were like, I think it's okay when this genre does gimmicks, but sometimes it's like, they don't always pay off, and maybe they should be minimized and not ever really take center stage. Like the center stage should be the stuff that makes a Metroidvania. And then if you have like a character chasing you, or if you have a dark world mechanic, like that could be something in one area and be pretty limited, and you do it for an hour and a half and then you move on. You don't really do it again for the rest of the game. I think the problem with Echoes is too much of its gimmicks took center stage. And I think that kind of distracted from what its core competencies a little bit, but still,
it has multiplayer.
It did have multiplayer, which I played some of, but by then
I played some of it too.
By then, we had moved past the stage where my friends would come over and play a lot of multiplayer games with me on couch co-op because I would beat them too much in video games. So they got
nice.
They got kind of like, we're just gonna go smoke weed. I'm like, okay, fine.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, Ohio, man. That's what it was like in Columbus.
For me, we were good Christian boys in Eastern Ohio.
Yeah. In the Central Ohio, very different. So for me, I think it's still pretty good, but I am kind of like faltering between no helmet and no suit for Echoes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's not as good as Fusion or Zero Mission, and I mean, Metroid 1 is good. It can go there. I will say this: the title song for Echoes is my favorite Metroid song in probably the whole series. That is a jam.
I'll have to re-listen to it because I don't remember it, but
it's good stuff. It's actually also used in the title screen for Metroid Prime Pinball. So there we go. That's going to be our transition here.
Metroid Prime Pinball, a game I definitely did play, but not a ton of. I like that game, but I don't. I
like this game too.
Yeah,
I played a bit of it. I mean, I like these kind of like, let's take a gaming IP and make a pinball game.
We need to do a tier list of those.
Game.
We need to do the video game mascot pinball tier list sometime.
Oh, Kirby Pinball was my jam. Then you have like, even when it's not necessarily tied to one of those like Demon Crush or those kind of games, they're so good. The Pokemon Pinball. Mm-hmm. I even like Sonic Spinball, which I feel like some people are a little down on, but that's what I like. This was on the DS, so it made a lot of sense, right? Because it's kind of like one tall screen.
Yep.
Well, look out for your bike there.
It's like, I must go back to my people. All right. Okay. I feel the same way. Like, like with the DS's tall screen was like, this kind of looks like a big long pinball table. This was going to make so much sense, and it worked. It kind of worked.
And it was compatible. I think it even came with the DS Rumble pack, which you would put into
Yeah.
the Game Boy Advance slot for that fun Rumble action.
Yeah.
Oh baby, and it makes sense, right? Like Samus turns into a ball, so now,
That does
now
make
she's a
sense.
pinball.
You can't argue with that.
Specifically, Metroid Prime theme, so you still have like those aesthetics and that music. Yeah. Now, okay, so I like Metroid Prime Pinball. Now it's like, what do I do with it? Like, am I going to say, yeah, it's as good as Zero Mission, or am I going to? I'm not putting it below No Helmet. I like it that much.
I think it's a good. It's like, this is what a good mascot pinball game is. It's right in the meaty center of the curve, where it's like, if it's good, that's fine. If it's bad, you won't even like know it exists because you won't even think about it. Yeah. But it's never going to go above like the middle, like B tier ever.
I will say, like, Metroid isn't like Mario or Kirby in that there's infinite spin-off potential.
Right.
Like, this was maybe the one idea that could work. They tried one other time, but it didn't work at all.
No, definitely not.
Metroid Pinball didn't work, and it was.
You know what? They should do a Metroid Dream Course and do Kirby's Dream Course with Samus and the ball. That's the thing they should do. That's the next spinoff. And Dream Course is a top tier Kirby game, so that's possible. All right,
fantastic.
Metroid Prime Hunters, which I believe is one of the best-selling Metroid games, was a DS launch-ish game. It came around
the launch. You got a demo with your system. That's right.
I played the crap out of that thing.
Yeah, we all did because it was free, and it was cool because at that time, like 3D portable games seemed insane. And then the full game, it's mostly a multiplayer like deathmatch shooter thing, but it did have a campaign that was it was like mission based, and it kind of felt like Metroid Prime, but then you're being like chased by one of the AI, like other bounty hunters things. So this is a tough one because I couldn't really get into it too much. It was more neat than anything else. It was like, wow, I can't believe this is working on a DS. I don't want to play it, but that's great. Now, we learned very quickly that any game where you hold a DS with one hand and have to constantly like use the stylus is very uncomfortable, especially because you had to like claw hold the DS because you had to
what you were supposed to do
button.
Was go in your DS box and get the thumb strap out that had the little thumb analog stick thing on it that you used, and you treated the screen like an analog stick. That's how you were supposed to play Super Mario 64 DS, and you could do it with this, and boy was that just people need to like Google because there's no way they know what I'm talking about from just the description.
I remember that.
Yeah, but if you haven't seen it, it was just a strap with like a stylus on your thumb, and boy, if it sounds stupid, it was really bad.
Like, who needs an analog stick?
Yeah, boy. And then guess what? The 3DS had an analog stick on it. So
it's a reason why we pretty quickly realized that all the best DS games are just going to be 2D games.
It is interesting, and I think if you had friends that were also playing it, it was probably pretty fun. But it was just never. I think did it have online? I think it had online.
Did it?
I think it might have. I played some Metroid Prime or Metroid multiplayer game online.
The only DS game I can specifically remember having online is Mario Kart DS because like it was like a whole thing. You would go to McDonald's and it would have Wi-Fi and you would play Mario Kart. Yeah,
free Wi-Fi at McDonald's if you had the DS. Yeah. Listen, I'm okay with putting this in full armor. I don't think it needs to go in the bottom tier. I
would be interested to play it again. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels like the kind of thing like if Nintendo was more willing to just like port many of these games and say, hey, here's $5. We kind of like messed around with the controls a little bit. Go play it. It could be a cool thing today, maybe, but that's never going to happen. So just going to kind of be a relic of the past. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. I never played. I was just, it was on, this is the Wii one, right? And I was just, at a certain point with my Wii, I think in the early days, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be the best first person gaming console ever. This thing is going to make so much sense. And then
we all thought that. Then Red Steel happened.
Yeah. And then I think I tried Call of Duty. Yeah. When Red Steel happened, I tried Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I'm like, what am I doing this thing? And then I just got into Call of Duty on the 360 and played that. And I just kind of skipped Metroid Prime 3. So I want to go back and play it, and that's actually why I started Metroid Prime again, because I'm like, I'm going to go through all these and get to Metroid Prime 3 and actually play this thing. But Mike, what do you think?
So first off, it's a Metroid Prime game, so that stuff is still very good. Like all
Yes.
that Metroid Prime exploration and gameplay and the scanning and on the progression is still super fun. This was the one that really was like adding more story content. Like this was the one a lot of people thought looked like Halo-ish. Like at the beginning, there's I think some kind of space marines talking to you, and there's these other bounty hunters, and there's like cutscenes and stuff. So that was a little weird. It also has a little bit of the Metroid Fusion problem in that there's multiple planets you go to. So again, each of them is kind of like a contained, smaller Metroidvania place
Mm.
to explore. But aside from that, just it again, it's a bit of that Echoes 2 thing where it's just not as good as Metroid Prime. It has some great moments. Like early on, you have that Ridley fight where you're like falling down an elevator shaft. It's almost like Gandalf versus the Balrog and
Right.
two towers. Like that's really cool. But that's pretty early, and that's like the main thing I remember from this one. So it probably belongs like along with Echoes. Like I'm not even sure which one I like more. I might like Echoes more just because I like that song so much.
All right. So, but you think it goes in no helmet with kind of everything else right here in the middle?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I mean, it's interesting that how little people seem to talk about this, right? You ask people about
Right.
the great Wii games, and they'll always remember, Mario Galaxy, or they'll probably even say something about Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess. But as much as people love like Metroid Prime, there was a Metroid Prime game for the Wii. It even came out pretty early on the system, right? Like you think this would have been Metroid's big chance, but not really. It didn't make much of a splash.
No, yeah, it came and went. But that wasn't the only Metroid game on the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
Metroid Other M from Tecmo's Team Ninja, I believe. And it's another one I didn't play because this one I was waiting for the reviews on, and I was excited about this. And then the reviews came out, and I was like, this sounds like a mixed bag. I'm not going to spend $50
I'd be
on
interested
this.
to watch you play this. I am one of these.
I should stream this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I am one of these games defenders, but to be clear, that doesn't mean I think it's great. I just try to say it's not awful like some people make it out to be, because the Metroid stuff is actually pretty well done. The whole exploration, and it does this neat 2.5D thing where a lot of times you're running around in a 2D environment, but sometimes it opens up 3D. The combat is a bit more action based, like it almost has a bit of a melee third person, like almost like Ninja Gaiden feel to it, but you still are shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the neat things is that wherever you are, you're in a 2D area, and usually you're holding your Wiimote like an NES controller. You point the screen, then it goes into first person. It's like a pointing, like click and aim missile thing. So a lot of those concepts were pretty cool. The story is very stupid and bad, and kind of like makes a lot of poor decisions, and it doesn't vibe with people well, and there is too much of it. So, and those complaints are all absolutely right. I'm just not convinced that it brings like, oh, well, then because of that, you can't appreciate anything else in the game. It's all garbage.
You're telling me that the team that developed Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball did not make a good story for this video game, Mike? I refuse to believe it.
The people who would go on to make Final Fantasy Origins.
Yeah, that's
Stranger
right.
of Paradise.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. And there's a lot of complaints like, oh, why is Samus so afraid of Ridley all of a sudden, and why is she taking orders from this guy? Like, all these games have to have a reason why Samus doesn't use her full kit. In this one, they're like, oh, she has to she won't use her missiles until like the commander says she can. And look, it is stupid, but it's all like, it's a video game. We know why they're doing those things. Mm-hmm. Like if earlier she got shocked by electricity and it's like, oh, she lost everything, and then you've just found those things in the ship, you'd suddenly feel better about that. Okay. So look, all I'm saying is that I don't think it's bottom tier. I think it's full armor. Okay. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. There's redeeming qualities here. I think it was fun to play. I enjoyed playing it despite its glaring flaws. I think there's something there. I wonder if this is ever going to have any kind of a revival, kind of like how Final Fantasy 13. Like people now are kind of kinder to that. Right. What if people are ever going to be kinder to Other M? It'll take a re-release, which I don't think will ever happen. So I don't know.
Listen, and I think Metroid Other M doesn't go in the bottom tier because we got to save that spot for Metroid Federation Force, which just an all around bad decision. I mean, listen,
a bad idea.
They clearly were making a game and slapped Metroid on it. But this is Rocket League, but slow and bad for the 3DS, right? And then,
oh no, that was only one half of it. Like there was that component of it, but then there was just like a Metroid Prime sort of. Because it's called Metroid Prime Federation Force, to be clear, which is okay. But then it was just like a third-person co-op Metroid game, but but bad. Like it didn't really. It was weird. That's not an experience that you should turn into a third player co-op game.
Mm-hmm.
And like the character designs are kind of like, I don't know if chibi eyes is the right word, but they're like squashed, a little bit more cartoony in a weird way. It felt weird, and nobody was into it. Nobody bought this game. Nobody. And then the people who did play it was like, yeah, it's kind of weird. There were some people like, it's kind of fun. It doesn't seem like a good fit for Metroid, but whatever. Yeah, I just don't. I just conceptually dislike it. It is the one like Metroid game I feel straight up derision for.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I feel like there was also there was going to be another one like this at some point. Maybe this is maybe I'm conflating the things. And there was like these two parts of Federation Force, and I always thought those were two separate games. But yeah, I only ever played this at E3. I think you were there, and
yeah.
And it was bad. It was bad. That was a bad E3 for Nintendo. Lots of bad games.
Yeah, I remember we were playing that. Yeah, because especially at E3 we were playing that like soccer Metroid game that was a part of this, or was it even a separate download from? I don't. It was like the same thing.
See, that's the thing.
It was a together package.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted Federation Force, and I know that's not always a great reason why not to make a game, because sometimes we're idiots and we don't know what we want. But it turns out we were right in not wanting this.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then the last one is Metroid Samus Returns, a full reimagining of Return of Samus, the Game Boy game we talked about earlier. This one came out in 2017 for the 3DS, so right as the Switch was coming out. And it also has been kind of overlooked because of that, but I played it, you played it. What do you think?
I liked it. I did. I thought it looked better than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Like, especially the background details were good. Again, we say this before. It is disappointing that Nintendo doesn't seem to ever think outside of just 3D models and a 2D plane for these things.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, it worked fine. I mean, it felt good. I did like the kind of, full aiming control that you had. It did make it feel a little bit more too dependent on action and aiming, that along with the whole sort of melee counter thing. So it was fighting heavy. It still has the problem of the original Metroid 2 in that everything feels kind of samey.
Yes.
It's this big area to explore, but all just kind of feels like an alien cave, and it gets repetitive, and you get a little bit tired of that. But the boss fights were fun. I liked the kind of Ridley encounter that they added on, which gave like the baby Metroid even a little bit more to do. It's kind of playing into fan service because we know like the baby Metroid is important later and how cool it is. So they give it a bit more of a starring role here. But I enjoyed it. I liked it. I don't have too much bad to say about it. Other than that, it's not as good as like Super Metroid or probably even Zero Mission.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. It's solid. I would definitely play it over the Game Boy original. I would probably prefer another Metroid 2 remake, but they're different enough that I'm glad that they both exist. Like, we didn't put another Metroid 2 remake on here because it's just a fan game. But
no fan game.
No fan games. But I think that for an officially sold Nintendo remake, Samus Returns is really solid, and I think the counter, like the combat counter, that really worked.
It felt good. It felt good when you got it off.
Good.
And I liked how the camera. It was neat how the camera would kind of move in for certain things, even though it was usually at that 2D plane. They did neat stuff with that.
Yeah, they did neat stuff, and it's just maybe the big problem, you're right, for me is like the structure of like just finding all these Metroids and fighting them. That does get repetitive after a while. So I lost some steam with it, but overall, it's still really solid. So probably another one for no helmet, you think? Because
I believe so. Yeah,
it's not as good as Zero Mission, and probably not even as good as Fusion.
So we'll put that in there, and I think that's about right. So kind of an interesting configuration here.
Well, I mean, any franchise that has two of the best games of all time, like these are Super Metroid and Metroid Prime are easily top 25 all time for my personal list. Like,
sure.
And I think Metroid Prime makes the top 10, and Super Metroid's probably right there as well. When you have that, and then the rest of the series isn't quite as good as that. Like, that's not uncommon.
It is hard when you have those really high measuring sticks, right? Because even with like Mario and Zelda, I think we felt we kind of went over that. There's a lot of games I feel almost equally about at the top, but here it's like Super Metroid, Metroid Prime, like those are pretty far ahead,
right?
And then Metroid Fusion, Zero Mission, basically because those are two games that are very similar to Super Metroid,
right?
They have so much of that energy, and they're very good because of it. But again, like, the only game here I would say is quote unquote bad is Federation Force. And if I played Federation Force again and I had two people, who knows? Maybe I'd find something to appreciate there. I think everything in No Helmet is certainly good to maybe even great. Like I like those games a lot.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and I'm gonna go and I'm looking forward to trying Corruption really for the first time, and I'll stream Other M and see what people. I bet people will enjoy that. But yeah, and then we got Dread coming out this year, Metroid 5. Yep, in just a couple of months, October for that one or September.
Yeah. Now see, like I'd be gobsmacked if I thought it was a Bikini, right? If I thought it was top tier, but it's like, you know what? There's certainly room for another no suit in the Metroid series,
exactly.
And that's what I'm hoping for.
I'll be very happy if we get another one in that second tier. That would be fantastic. And then Metroid Prime 4, who knows if it ever comes out at this point?
Who knows?
Yep.
Who knows?
There's a chance here, and really, this is like Metroid's chance with Dread to really break out. This series
seems like there's some buzz because we weren't talking about it on the podcast. So like all these, it's still Metroid, still maybe won't sell that well, but now like people are like, oh, it's been the #1 best-selling game on Amazon. People are like freaking out and going back to the Wii U to play the Game Boy Advance games. Maybe this is Metroid's time. Maybe the stars are aligning here. We'll see.
Yep, it's time for that Switch effect to happen on Metroid, and that's very exciting to me. So, if Metroid can move up into that top tier Nintendo, probably not quite the top tier, but like right behind that.
The Luigi's Mansion tier, right?
Yes,
like,
the Luigi's Mansion tier. Yes,
or even like the Fire Emblem tier would be good for Metroid these days.
Yep, absolutely. Fire Emblem sold like 3 million copies or something like that. If that does those numbers, that would be fantastic. All right, that's going to do it for us. Please let us know your opinions in the comments. If you think we put Metroid Other M way too high in that second from the bottom tier, you just get in those comments to tell us.
Yeah, what do you think is going to be the most controversial here? It might be Other M just being not on the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that. I think... let me see here. I feel there's a lot of the ones in No Helmet will probably have some people who feel strongly about them and moving them up or down. I think Samus Returns might get a little bit because that's a recent one. So people might be like, hey, move that up. Because I know a lot of people really like that game. So, yeah. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with another one of these relatively soon. Until then, take care of yourself. Have a good one. And goodbye.
Bye.